Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. I am really thrilled to welcome this week's very special guest, Travis Nelson, the Director of the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. Travis, thank you so much for taking time to chat today.
Truly my pleasure.
Thank you. So I'm going to make a disclaimer that I have never made before with any of my guests in the last bunch of years, which is that you do national security. And so if there's anything you should not answer or don't want to answer, I want to give you that license. And please feel free to share what you can, but don't what you shouldn't.
I appreciate that.
All right. So let's start with your background. How did you get into national security? You grew up on the Eastern Shore. What gave you the bug to work in this?
Certainly. So if you had asked me when I was growing up if I would have anything to do with Homeland Security, I would have thought you were crazy. I grew up wanting to be a police officer, and that's the exact route that I took. My desire was in helping people, and it started at a very base level with being a EMT with the Volunteer Rescue Squad, becoming a state trooper. It was dealing with very individual problems and very short-term problems. However, I quickly found that my strength was in more complex issues. Uh, Going from investigating a single accident to becoming an accident reconstructionist, because I never liked to not know what's going on. And that's ultimately what led me is having that diverse background in emergency services. Homeland Security encompasses everything. So
Yes.
that's why I was assigned to emergency management for 10 years and ultimately led to me here.
And you were with Maryland State Police for is 19 years, is that right?
Yes, yep. I was the state
Okay.
trooper for 19 years.
And U.S. Cyber Command and U.S. Senate Homeland Security Committee?
No, I mean I've worked with those committees, but
Okay.
yeah, not directly assigned. I've got a variety of groups that I've worked with over the years and worked on different projects. But
Okay.
yeah, so I mean
Well,
most of my work has been state and local level.
yes. Well, we are lucky to have you. I want to start with I want to stay with personal and then we'll go to your job. I believe you're married with two kids.
No, I'm married, but no kids.
All right, we must have another Travis Nelson because my staff always does great research. So we are about another one. How do you do the barriers of when you can share with your spouse and when you feel like you don't want to bring home your work?
That's interesting, and it goes past just what's classified and not classified because there's also a balance of uh, when you live in this world every day, it's hard for a person that doesn't live in this world every day to know what's alarming and what's not alarming. And
Hmm.
so we process threats very differently. So many times I do leave work at work. However, there's obviously some things that I bring home or that naturally I'll be taking a call and it might seem concerning, but it isn't at the end of the day. So it's one of those things where it's just I've learned to self-regulate, I guess you could say, and I'm very good at taking calls in closets and cars and different places where nobody can hear me.
That's pretty funny. So I was going to ask, so self-regulation isn't always possible in your job because emergencies are emergencies. So how do you do nights, weekends, birthdays, holidays when something comes up? Do you ever
Yes.
get to say no?
When I worked in special operations of state police for over 10 years, and I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And that didn't, depend on it could be in the middle of the night or not. Um, Really, everyone, friends and family around me have always learned to adapt with that. And then you also learn that you don't just leave the house with your keys and a cell phone. I always have a bag. I always have things with me because the one time that you don't have those things is
Yes.
when you're going to need them. And that's
Yes.
what I've learned all over the years.
And translate, please. When you say a bag, you're not talking a bag with a burger and fries in it. You're talking about
Yeah,
like an overnight bag or something if
yeah,
you need to go somewhere.
right. In
Okay.
my car, just switching to this role and having a police car for years, I could just always have it in my police car. Well,
Mhm.
now, being having driving a personal vehicle in a civilian capacity is all these things are now in the trunk. So when we go to get groceries, it's
Yeah.
like moving all of my bags of clothes, of
Yes.
laptops and satellite phone and all these things in from one vehicle to the next.
Okay. So here's the first question that you may or may not want to answer. How many laptops do you have? How many cell phones do you have?
So I have two cell phones, and this is a good rule of thumb for anyone. So if you do have two cell phones, different networks, put them on different networks. I'm not going to advocate for
Mm.
one network or the other, but two cell phones, two different networks. I do have two laptops as well.
Interesting.
In the form of redundancy. So almost everything I have has some form of redundancy, and then obviously, in addition to my two regular cell phones, there's a satellite phone that I carry as well.
Sure, sure. All right, so let's start by defining Homeland Security. Everyone hears about it, but it's a lot broader than people imagine. So it includes climate, cyber, terrorist attacks, physical security. Give us the idea of the range of things that you cover.
Certainly. So there's 16 different critical infrastructure sectors that really keep our society functioning and safe. And so as Homeland Security Director, I'm responsible for those sectors to remain operational at all times within our state. And that can range from our power grid all the
Mhm.
way down to financial stability and commerce, to communications, to healthcare. And
I
so
was just
it
going to say our hospitals, infrastructure, the Bay Bridge.
Yes,
Um, is our election infrastructure included on the 16?
it's not. So election infrastructure is not part of that original 16, but it is a piece of what I'm responsible now. As you know, in Maryland, we have the separate board of elections, but
Yeah.
uh, throughout the year, every year, I'm talking to the elections administrator and the deputy elections administrator because in Maryland, we still take election security very seriously.
Of course.
And we want to make sure that we're prepared leading up to the election. That's a year-round task.
So give an example. So you said power grid, we talked about healthcare, infrastructure. Obviously, if our roads or bridges get shut down, as with the tragic, just what's the word I want? Demolition,
Yeah,
destruction of the Key Bridge in Baltimore. All of that disrupts our fiscal, our financial health of our economy, as well as people's day-to-day safety and way of going about the state. So talk about how you can control any of that.
So I'll give one good example with the Key Bridge that I worked on that probably a lot of people don't necessarily think about, and that's supply chain.
Mhm.
So, everyone was concerned about getting the port reopened to resume trade, to resume our economy. But one of the things that I had to look at was what supplies actually come in through that port, and that may ultimately not just impact Maryland, but the entire region. If it's baby formula, these very rare things that may only come in through that port
Mhm.
or otherwise come in through another area. During the hurricane down in North Carolina, there was a medical facility was taken out
Yep.
that ultimately caused an IV fluid shortage.
Mhm.
So those supply chain things are still a critical Homeland Security piece because as society, we are used to needing something and being able to readily get it.
Yes.
And I think there is a generation that lived through the Great Depression that is unfortunately mostly gone now, and
Mhm.
um, and this generation that is still here has never learned how to actually adapt and do that.
So true. And we can do without a lot of the things that we think we, quote unquote, need. So there's that too. Um, how can the 188 members of the Senate and House be supportive of your work, other than obviously budget? Everybody always wants more money, but what policies, where are we barriers, or where can we be more helpful?
Yeah, so I think that is taking the evolving threat and when I say threat, I don't just mean human, but also just natural threats and different things that impact our society and evaluate them and draw in different experts and really compel. Legislators have the ability to mandate that things occur within our state. Even the governor of the state may sign an executive order, but in many ways that can still be limited if we're not under a state of emergency. So the preparatory activities and the things that we can do to mitigate issues is really where the General Assembly comes into play here,
Hmm.
is being able to properly in a controlled environment discuss all angles of things and then create really well thought out legislation that allows us to bring people together to actively plan as opposed to a governor's executive order, which a lot of times is in response to something and it's
Yes.
a bit more chaotic in how we have to respond.
Okay. Has there been anything that we've done since you've been on in the beginning of 2024 that has been problematic?
So, well, no, problematic, not so much. I think, a lot of times when in Maryland, we take these issues very seriously. In
Yes.
some of the other states, there is a feeling that we're violating individual privacy rights or we're overstepping as the government in many ways if we try to take certain actions. In Maryland, we tend to evaluate those aspects of privacy
Hmm.
and we respect them, but we also understand that there's a very real need to bring people together and to take these actions and
Yes.
to do this because when something does occur, as our current Secretary of Homeland Security at the national level has even said, is that there's many states that are far behind
Hmm.
where Maryland is, and that is deeply concerning to her.
Sure.
I'm proud of the work that we've done with the General Assembly and what we've been able to do.
Good. So let's pivot. There are three branches of government. So that's the legislative branch, the executive branch, other members of the cabinet. So as you were talking, I was thinking about MDEM, the
Mhm.
Maryland Department of Emergency Management, obviously the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, the Department, everything. I imagine you have your fingers in virtually every department. How does that go? And who's, quote, the boss?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So by executive order, and that was actually back in 2003, and it's still just as good as that, our role as the governor's appointed Homeland Security Director gives us the authority to go into each of these departments and ensure that they are performing activities that are going to ensure that Maryland is preventing and preparing for a variety of issues. Now, as over the years, since 2003, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, formerly known as the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, which,
That was my legislation that made it a cabinet level
yes,
department.
congratulations. And so I was there. I was there, as a assigned liaison when it
Mhm.
was MEMA under the military department, then ultimately
Mhm.
became its own department.
Mhm.
But that just shows how much that emergency management has grown
Huge.
in just that short window, that 10 years.
Mhm.
So, before we were limited, there was a very disconnected way of coordination. But now I talk to Secretary Strickland daily, for
Nice.
multiple times a day,
Wow.
because I know his staff are also engaged at all levels and kind of working on that preparedness activity. But I always am showing up at random places. We were at a military breakfast this morning. I may be at the Secretary of Transportation Security Council later, next week. I am literally everywhere and part of this is also so I can better understand their operation.
Sure.
So if we do need to make some quick decisions, that there's a minimal delay because I already understand how they operate.
Sure. So let's just talk climate change for a second, which has
Mhm.
affected Maryland all over. I mean, Western Maryland, we've had issues, Annapolis, obviously. Um, even here, I mean, in Rockville and Gaithersburg, we've had challenges. So MDEM does preparation. The Department of the Environment certainly is the policy making entity. How do you, and then let's not forget that we have to address people with disabilities or veterans or people who are in senior centers, nursing homes. There's so many components, and then there's the cost.
Mhm.
How do you start to think about that? How do you work with all those departments and interest groups?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's really concerning watching what is happening at the federal level, because they are removing so many of those considerations. They're removing the consideration of people that are not able to be mobile, people that may not have family members that can come in and help them.
Hmm.
That is where our job as government is to be there in people's time of need. And
Yes.
so for us to say that, well, that's just going to be your responsibility to figure out is negligent, right? And Governor Moore always says this, and I think it's originally a JFK quote, but it's we don't do it because it's easy, we do it because it's hard.
Hmm.
It's really easy to say, well, they'll figure it out, or this is going to be after I leave office, and or I'll take that chance. And
Hmm.
climate change is one of those things that is not going to happen overnight. We're seeing the impacts of it today, but it is going to last far outside of any executive's period and term. And so when they're trying to budget, it's the most responsible thing to do is to think about our next generations that are come after us and not so much about, well, I'd rather spend money on short-term projects where I can celebrate, but rather make sure that next generations are better protected by mitigation and resiliency. So
Yes.
watching the federal government dismantle the resiliency program is really concerning because that is what is ensuring that we don't have these major disasters down the road, or if we do, the impact is minimized.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask about the changes that you've seen since January 20th of this year with the Trump administration. But I guess you have already addressed that. It's a little terrifying, actually, or a lot terrifying. You referenced privacy, so let's shift to the third branch of government, the judiciary. What do you see and how do you see the balance between the national security, homeland security, and our right to have our own private lives?
Yeah, and we respect the court system and we don't want to overreach. And I think that's also where Maryland comes in is that we have no desire to reach into someone's private lives and extract any detail that we don't need or we don't feel is threatening to someone else. However, we do want to make sure that we can prevent things. So if there are indicators that tell us that someone is going to commit a mass violence attack or something along those lines,
Sure.
we have to have the tools to be able to stop it. And we don't want to, do that in a illegal manner. So it has to be methodical. It has to be with warrants. And I think that's where we are deeply concerned about the what we see at the federal level is we're seeing just total disregard for the normal judicial
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
We're not seeing warrants. We're not seeing things. And so it is, essentially they are hand picking what they want to enforce and how they want to do it. And then
Yes.
the courts are trying to catch up afterwards. And then they're trying to undo things. And
Hmm.
we all know that, putting things back in the bag after you take them out is always more
Yes.
difficult.
So I have friends that are who are worried about traveling abroad because the stories about having having ICE agents arrest them or demand access to their electronic devices, looking through their social media, getting passwords, looking at all their texts and stuff. If it weren't you, Travis, some other random person, could you be doing that in Maryland?
So we
Stopping and yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, we don't we have no desire to go through people's materials like that in any manner unless they are doing something that is essentially criminal, right?
Yes.
And so out of pure interest in trying we don't go out trying to search anyone that we think may have committed a crime. We need reasonable articulable suspicion. We need probable cause
Hmm.
before we're ever going to take that step into someone's private materials and private lives. So,
Hmm.
I think what we're seeing in those regards is concerning because we're uh, and whether it's happening or not, it's the idea is that it may be happening.
Yes.
So, I do recommend, especially to any my colleagues or friends that travel out of the country is think about the materials, and this is not just from a homeland security standpoint, but also if they are traveling to another country, is to know that the sophistication of foreign nations to be able to draw out personal information is actually making them a bit vulnerable as well. So it's good practice, not just for what you may be turning over to our government, which you should hopefully be able to trust. It's
Hmm.
the foreign governments as well that we need to make sure that we're doing a better job at protecting our own information.
Do you recommend that people leave their primary phone or only phone at home and get a burner if they're traveling abroad? A
It
burner
depends what
phone?
country. So if you the U.S. Department of State has advisories for every
Mm-hmm.
single place that you travel, and I highly recommend, particularly with the current climate internationally, and there's so
Yeah.
many different countries that are becoming involved in conflict right now, is to not just look at the Department of State's website before they travel, but is
Mm.
to also register with the Safe Traveler program, the STEP program,
Mm.
because then the US government knows that you're traveling, you
Yes,
know that you're there, and they have your name. So if you need to get to the embassy, you can in a time of need. So it's scary to think that we need to think in that way right now because we want to be able to travel, we want to be able to enjoy life, and you
sure.
still can. We just have to be able to do it safely and take a few extra steps to plan.
That is such a great tip. Thank you for that. Um, we have seen enormous spikes in hate crimes, whether that's against Jews, LGBTQ folks, whether it's the Korean community, Chinese Americans, Muslim Americans. I mean, there's so much hate and violence. And we recently had two legislators and their spouses in Minnesota who were shot, and two of them died. And so, are you involved? Do you work with the FBI and the state police? How does that work? Are you involved when you say when we think there's something that might be being planned? Are you a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm deeply involved in not just ensuring that our executive branch, state executive branch employees are kept safe, but all of our elected officials and government officials in general. We are seeing not just race related, but just general threats against state employees that are on the front lines and service workers.
Mm-hmm.
There is at some point, I don't know if this is just exposure through social media or something, but it has become more acceptable to act out or almost in some ways promote it because they feel validated by what they're seeing online. And so some of this is making sure that we each take our own safety and security into play here. And what I
Yes.
mean by that is, we've become a society where when we're walking, we put headphones in immediately and we listen to something, and we never want to waste a minute. We want to be in our zone, we want to be in that space. But the minute we do that, we make ourselves vulnerable. And so in the
Because we're
past,
not paying attention to our surroundings.
exactly.
Hmm.
And then, or just looking down at a phone and not looking at what's going on around us.
Hmm.
And so there is some sense of just natural responsibility for each individual to take action to keep themselves safe.
Hmm.
However, we also want to make sure that we, as one another, are condemning when we hear these things, right? So if
100%.
we hear that someone is making comments about another type of person, it
Hmm.
requires the courage to say that's not acceptable,
Hmm.
because silence is perceived
Affirmation.
to be affirmation. Exactly.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we need to be more compelled to not put our headphones in, but take them out and to speak up when we hear these things, because it is a virus that spreads
Yep.
and it can impact the communities very greatly.
So, one of the many worst examples was the insurrection on January 6th, 2021. So, we have living in Maryland some of the heroes, some of our public safety officers who live in Maryland, and we also have some of the insurrectionists who were pardoned on the very first day of Donald Trump's administration. How does one balance that? And if these folks have been pardoned, do you ignore them and let them go about their business? Do you keep a special eye out?
Yeah, so when I was with the state police, I oversaw the unit that was responsible for coordinating Maryland's response to January 6th.
Mm,
So I was, one of the first ones to be deployed, and I was there until 4 a.m. until all
mm,
the votes have been
mm.
certified, all the ballots
Thank
have been
you.
certified.
Thank
And so,
you.
no, you're welcome. And
Mm,
uh, it was deeply concerning, but not surprising. And so I think, I still think about my colleagues that were literally assaulted, and that is really you lose a level of trust
Yes.
in the foundation of which you swore an oath to when you see those types of things occur. However, um, my colleagues that I've worked with, whether in law enforcement, in public service in general, um, they're dedicated to the mission, and they refuse to let the actions of political actions of an individual, regardless of how hard they worked, how hard the investigators and the agents and others worked to ensure that they got reasonable sentences, to watch that completely come unfolded. We are going to continue to get up every morning, and we're going to continue to do the job.
Yeah.
And they can say what they would like to say. They can do what they want to do, but we're going to continue to do the job, and we're going to continue to answer the call. And we pray that it doesn't happen again. But if it
Yes.
does, we'll answer the call again.
So I just want to say their names because it was such a high honor for me to invite and welcome to the Senate my friend Sergeant Aquilino Ganell, as well as Harry Dunn, Officer Danny Hodges, and Michael Fanone, the four officers who testified before the January 6th Congressional Committee and who have been reviled and disrespected in such terrible ways by too many. And to me, they are American heroes, and no one can ever take that away, should ever try to take that away.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
thank you for supporting them. Let's talk briefly about just a couple more things. Other levels of government. We talked about federal, we talked about the cabinet, we talked about the General Assembly. Let's talk about the counties and the municipalities, the college campuses, the federal agencies, the local places that might be under threat.
Certainly, and Senator, you know from working so closely with an emergency management community that every incident and issue begins and ends locally, right? So,
Yep.
so we know that we work closely with our campuses, whether they're state universities or community colleges or even a local elementary school. Uh,
Hmm.
but it is more important for that local response entity, that local government to be engaged with that school because those are going to be the first ones in and the last ones out.
Hmm.
The state is there to support the efforts of preparedness, of response, and all these different things. But the communities that they live with, that they serve with, that they are engaged with, are the ones that are really critical in how we can prevent and respond to any event that is to occur. So extremely important. And I mentioned this morning as I was talking about critical infrastructure safety is the local police officer, the local responder, the local bus driver is going to know when something is different.
Yes.
And they're going to notice that why is that person there? There's not normally a person there. Why
Hmm.
is there a car there? There's not normally a car there.
Hmm.
Reporting those types of incidents quickly because they know what's unusual
Yeah.
is how we are going to stop the next major event from occurring.
Yes. Yes. Um, how is Maryland more challenging and maybe even more interesting than other states?
By nature, our proximity to the National Capital Region in DC, right? So we have there's two main reasons I say Maryland's unique is we call Maryland the little US, right? We
Yep.
have mountains, we have
America in
beaches.
miniature.
Yes, yes. So
Louis Goldstein used to say that.
yeah. And so we have to know how to meet people where they are in
Hmm.
preparedness. Is that, the issues that Ocean City faces and the issues that the DC
Gaithersburg.
region faces are way different. The
Hmm.
issues in Rockville, in Germantown, like not just the way that people live their lives, it is just in pure preparedness and air response abilities in those spaces.
Hmm.
We have a lot of federal facilities, particularly around your district, that
Hmm.
we have to engage with a federal partner that may or may not be able to share exactly what they have or what they do there. However,
Hmm.
when something happens there, we still have to respond. So
Yes.
that added level of preparedness of working with everything from the National Security Agency and Fort Detrick and all of these places.
NIH,
Yeah,
NIST,
yes.
NOAA.
Yeah,
Hmm.
all these places that Maryland is home to, but
Hmm.
never forget the Western Maryland areas and what they went through with their recent flood,
Yes.
you know, and that is what is a threat to them right now, and what is a threat to different areas, to the metropolitan area could be totally different. So,
Yes.
being able to pivot, and I always say that, when I go from one call to the next, I have to do a total brain dump because they're
Hmm.
dealing with totally separate issues than what I just walked away from, and they have a totally
Totally.
different perspective.
You had a magic wand. What would you have every Maryland resident do to be more prepared and safe in case of an emergency?
I
What's
say
something
this
we?
every I say this every single time I have this opportunity.
Hmm.
It is go back to the 1980s form of planning. And what I mean by that is we have become so dependent on cell phones, GPS, having readily access communication. When was the last time that a family simply said, in the event of an emergency, this is where we go?
Yes.
We got away from that. We got away from when I would go to the mall or with my parents, it
Hmm.
was you better be back at this place by this time.
Hmm.
And but we don't necessarily need to do that anymore because we're used to having a text or a call.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when a big disaster happens, whether it's an earthquake or whatever, we cannot rely on those communications. We
Hmm.
cannot rely on those devices. So what I say to people is, take a day and instead of using GPS, look at a map, figure out maybe some route alternatives, and
Hmm.
just use some. What is crazy is although we have evolved as society and our tools have evolved, um, when a disaster strikes, we have to revert back to the basics. And
Yes.
that is the best way to do it is to just have basic communication with our loved ones is to say advanced planning, advanced talking. I'll be home by 5 tonight. I'm going to these places today.
Hmm.
If you need something and you can't reach me, call this person. And those are such simple tips.
So I learned a million years ago that in our cell phone address book that we should put in ICE in case of emergency. ICE obviously means something much different and much more sinister now. Does anyone still do that? Is that good practice?
They should. I guarantee you that a lot of people have not engaged in the emergency contact tools. But even from a lock screen, at
Mhm.
all phones you see that it says, there's a little emergency thing where you can override the lock and it can go and call one of the emergency contacts there. And as an emergency responder, I mean, that's really helpful because if you're alone in a car and you're not able to speak, and you have your phone, that
Yeah.
allows us to more quickly contact your family on a very basic emergency level. And then, if it is something more serious, more widespread, more mass casualty, God forbid, it allows us to more rapidly learn what different medical conditions you may have and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Who we can call, where you reside, things of that nature.
Yep.
It's really helpful.
Good. We're getting ready to go to the Fast Five. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell a quick story of how your work has made a difference. What have you done that has mattered?
So, since 2014, I was appointed to co-chair the Maryland's Active Assailant Interdisciplinary Work Group, and that was a direct response to the Naval Yard shooting.
Mhm.
What we saw at the Navy Yard shooting was a complete disconnect on all of the different response entities, and primarily between emergency medical services and law enforcement. Then Governor O'Malley's Homeland Security Advisor, which is ironically now my job, which I never thought I'd have,
Mm-hmm.
gave us a directive to work on that. Over the last 10 years, I just had to step out of that role because that was a Maryland State Police co-chair role,
Mm-hmm.
is we have created guidelines, plans, and brought people together that never would have sat in a room together to plan together.
Yeah.
And we've created not just national plans, but plans that have gone internationally to the UK on how we coordinate together. And it's about getting the right service to the right person. And it's not about putting a police officer in a position where they're trying to be a counselor or a mental health specialist. We want mental health professionals working in mental health situations, and we want emergency medical services working in emergency medical services. So about putting the right people in the right place at the right time and effectively serving our community, because that is what causes recovery to happen faster. So that's probably been my crowning achievement is the progress and the successes of the Active Assailant Work Group.
I love it. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Um, Travis Nelson, it is time for the Fast Five. Five quick questions, five quick answers. And sometimes we do heavy duty ones, but because your job is so heavy duty, I'm going to go a little lighter on you. Question number one. What do you do after a stressful day? What do you do to relax and decompress?
I take French lessons.
I
I
love
know, sounds
that.
crazy. It sounds crazy, but it requires my brain to totally disconnect.
C'est formidable. Je parle français assez bien.
You're way far advanced.
Okay. Well, now I have to change question two, which was, is there a skill that you're continuing to try to master? So let's take French off the table. Is there something
Yeah.
else?
You know, I don't know if there's necessarily a unique skill that I'm trying to master, but I always am trying to. I grew up on the Eastern Shore, and I'm always trying to improve my dialect. So it's related to French,
All right.
but a lot of people still make fun of their, I'll slip up and I may say water, and with the water sector issues, and they say
Right.
water. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm trying to work on my dialect to make sure that it's more easily understandable across all the states.
That's funny. Question number three. You look so fit and healthy and active. What is your favorite junk food?
Oh, junk food. Wow, and I am pretty active. I would say I would have to say, wow, this is tough. Ice cream. Yeah, no, I would
Ice
say ice
cream.
cream. Yeah.
What flavor?
I am a chocolate chip cookie dough guy.
Okay. All right. Question number four. What makes you laugh?
Um, I would say that, these should be a lot easier than they are. These are actually the fast five or my slow five. I'm over analyzing these. I would say just spending time with friends. Disconnecting and being able to just tell jokes and laugh and not talk about work is so, so important. We have developed a society of where we are constantly talking about work, that
Yes.
we have to learn how to disconnect and we have to learn how to just laugh together and have a good time and enjoy each other's company.
Amen. Okay. Do you have a clean Homeland Security joke that you can tell quickly?
Oh my gosh, I don't know of a clean Homeland Security joke. Hmm.
Reasonably clean. PG-13, let's
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know if I
All
have
right.
like the easy one of
All
like,
right.
a cop and a EMT walk into a bar. I don't know.
That's where I was going to
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be your homework assignment.
Yeah,
Question
thank you.
number five, Travis Nelson, the director of the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. What is your hidden secret superpower? What's a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
Hmm. Um, I don't know if there's a special skill, but I would say my brain, it works in a very organized fashion. So I do things. I can take disorder and I can organize it very, very quickly. I'm not great at puzzles though, but
Okay.
you can give me a complex problem and I can dissect it and move it and to prioritize it very, very quickly. And that's just I think that's how I ended up in this job, is
That's
that my
fantastic.
brain can work in that manner of looking at a problem and pulling out each different part and organizing it.
Okay, so can you anagram? Are you a good Scrabble player? That's
You would think I would be, but I honestly don't play Scrabble. I don't know why.
okay.
I know I
All
need to
right.
Scrabble more.
There you go. Well, thank you, Travis Nelson. It was such a pleasure and such an honor, frankly, having time to talk with you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your career of service, to keeping us all safe. It's really been a joy to talk, and I look forward to seeing you again before too long.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your service to the public service community. It's public safety notices you as well, Senator. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Stay well. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.